Can you share how you landed Mark Manson's newsletter? Were you applying actively for many newsletters all at once, and this ended up being the one you got?
Nope, most definitely not. It's like, as you'll discover that nothing in my life is very planned. So how I landed that job was, this was back in 2017, I think. I knew of Mark Manson. I obviously knew the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, because most people know the book. But I was in the camp where I was, you see the book. It's orange, it's very bright, it's in the bookstore. It's kind of screaming at you. And I was very skeptical. I was like, oh no, it's just a gimmick, they're just using a swear word to try to grab attention. There can't be much to it. But at the time, I was working in a corporate job in human resources, and my boss, who is a German woman, lovely woman called Agnes, she loved Mark Manson. And I had a lot of respect for Agnes. And at one point, Agnes bought all of us in the team Everything is Fucked, which is Mark's follow-up book to The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I thought, if Agnes loves him so much, I should check him out. So I read The Subtle Art, immediately fell in love with both the writing and the philosophy. So I was like, oh wow, this book really does have something. No wonder it's such a popular book. So I read The Subtle Art, I read Everything is Fucked, and then I started reading his blog, markmanson.net. I just devoured everything on the blog. And it was that experience where you're reading, advice about, you were reading self-help, thoughts about struggle and pain and relationships and boundaries. And every single article that I read, I'm like, I agree with this. It's like, I agree with everything that you're saying. I'm like, amazing. And it felt like I'd found a life philosophy. Someone else had verbalized my life philosophy back to me in such a succinct and well-written way. So I started idolizing Mark. So he became one of my top 5 favorite authors. He still is. And then, of course, I subscribed to his newsletter, which at the time was different to what it is now. I think it might have been called Mindfuck Monthly or Mindfuck Monday. I can't quite remember which era this was, but I subscribed. Okay. And one day in the newsletter, he had the job advertisement. He said, I'm hiring for a research and content assistant. And I thought, I have absolutely zero background in research, but I love Mark. I did not have a job at the time. This was 2020. I just quit my corporate job. I was about to move to Vietnam. A remote job would be perfect. It would just be a dream. And I didn't really think, I hoped to get it, but I didn't really think that I would, because I didn't really have a background that would help me stand out. So I just, in the first round of application, we were asked to write an essay, what are your long-term career goals and how will this job help you get there? So in that 500 words, I just said everything. I'm like, I don't have background in research. I didn't study psychology. There's nothing commending me for this job, except I have a life story. So I just leaned into depression, mania, hospitalization, and kind of trying to piece my life back together, being intentional, choosing the struggle in my life that I want to suffer, trying to reflect this language back at him. And that helped. And then I got the job, and I've been working for Mark since September 2020. So I started as a content and research assistant. And then at the time, we were a very small team. It was just Mark and 4 of us. So my job just evolved a lot. I got to be involved in social media. And then eventually, a couple of years ago, I became in charge of Mark's newsletter. And right now, my official job title, which I had to ask Mark to verbalize for me. Like last year, I was like, Mark, what is my job title now? I don't know what I'm doing. So he was like, okay, you're the newsletter and website manager. I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that. So that's kind of how I got the job and how I came to manage his newsletter.